This is TWiT.
Apple News Plus subscriptions are growing 4 times faster than major publishers, according to a report from an analytics firm, CIRP. So the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, growing at a quarter the rate of Apple News Plus subscriptions. Apple
but they got to make up a lot of ground too. I mean, the growing is a big word.
Yeah.
I mean, so what are they at now as their subscription? You know, of course, the publishers already have a shrinking group of things,
it's kind of meeting in the middle, right? As they go down, Apple News goes up. But this graph is pretty telling. The blue bar 2020, the green bar 2024. This is Apple News, which is 24% of Apple buyers using Apple News compared to 17% using New York Times, 11% Journal, 11% WAPO. So people, as much as I mock Apple News, and I really do mock Apple News, it's pretty popular with Apple users.
I have to admit, I use it all the time. You know, it's funny. I used to be a really big Flipboard user, and Flipboard started doing pop-up ads that sit over top of their Flipboard. And after using Flipboard for 15 years or something like that or more, it only took 2 days, and I was like, "Well, I'm done with this app."
Yeah,
I'm totally embedded into that app, and it was like it just took 2 days of them putting these little floating ads that pop over everything else, and I was like, "Well, I can't use this anymore." And so I just went, and now I'm almost. You know, for me, I listen to news over audio a lot, and then
it will read to you, right? So you got a Washington Post story, and you're interested, you can say, "Read it to me." Is that right?
You mean Apple News?
Yeah.
No, some of them are recorded, but it doesn't. And I don't I'm sure that they're trying to protect the publishers. I mean, there's a lot. My biggest complaint about Apple News is there's obviously a lot of deals they made with the publishers that are super annoying for the user. Like when I mute a publisher, I don't want to know that they exist. Instead of having these big gray windows that say you muted this, like I'm like, okay, that's what I didn't want to look at anymore. You know, and so.
Oh, I see. So if you go to Apple News, they have an audio tab and select audio articles from the select publications.
Are read, and they're read really nicely. I will say the production value is of course, it's Apple, so it's extremely high production value for audio. But, you know, we have AI. Like, I feel like I can read everything.
Of Crime, published in the print issue of The New Yorker with the headline, Land of Make-Believe.
So that's a human. That ain't no AI reading.
No, it's a human. I'm just saying that I would definitely prefer. The problem really for publishers is how do you make money?
A $2 million treasure appeared in a Kentucky cornfield. No one knows.
This is like a podcast. It's what
it's
like
a podcast.
Like.
It's really high quality. I have to admit, I don't like the music thing at the beginning.
That's weird, huh?
And so I wish they'd stop doing that. And then it does warn me that they're about to happen, so I can turn it off if I accidentally clicked on it. But I think that you just feel
How
like
about sports, Jason. Jason's a big sports fan, and I know that they now have sports coverage from who is it? The Athletic?
The Athletic, which I already pay for, so it's not that big a deal for me. Okay. But I mean, it's an interesting thing. I feel like they're comparing apples and oranges, talking about penetration, because you end up with like Apple One bundle and like how much are people actually using it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't pay for News Plus.
My News Plus use is entirely Wall Street Journal articles I want to read because they're not paywalled there.
Yeah.
And that's it. But that's about it. But, you know, they could build a different bundle. I think it's weird. I think the story is sort of trying to tell a story that doesn't exist because it's trying to piggyback on that story about how more publishers are finding that they're getting increased revenue from News Plus. I think that's good, right? Like, I think a lot of publishers want extra revenue, but whether they can rely on News Plus as a solution to their business model, it seems really unlikely. But I don't go to news as my source for information. I have other apps and RSS feeds and things for that. So
that was a pretty significant story on Semaphore a couple of weeks ago. The Daily Beast, they talked to the Daily Beast saying that's contributing like $3 or $4 million a year. Time.com said another $7 million, 7-figure annual payout. And it's I don't know if that's going to last, but in an era where like Google search is returning fewer and fewer rewards and sending fewer and fewer people to news sites, I mean, you got to diversify. I thought it was interesting that even the Daily Beast was saying that the amount of money they were getting from their Apple News deal far exceeded what they were getting from paid memberships, which I thought that if you're a fan of this, if it's some interesting metrics and not something that I would have guessed when they launched the service a few years ago.
Yeah, the argument was always, well, why should I do this when I can sell direct memberships?
Yeah.
And I think there's truth in that, especially if you're a big player. I think, though, that maybe what people are learning is there are two audiences here. There's Brand X's audience, and you love Brand X, and you pay for Brand X, and you get it. Like I pay for The Athletic, and I have for years. Great. And then there's Apple's audience, which is you're in the Apple One bundle, maybe you get Apple News Plus. You're on Apple's devices, you use their news app to read things, and you see this stuff. And just because you see it and you read it, basically money will flow back to the publishers from those people. It is kind of like another revenue source, like how Google search, leads people who are not your loyal readers to you, and you monetize it through ads or whatever, right? It's a little like that from another source. And that could be good, right? I mean, the argument there is that the Daily Beast has its core audience that loves it and pays for it. And then there's a portion of Apple's audience that will sometimes read content from the Daily Beast, and they get some money from that. And that's not necessarily bad. They might convert some of those to paid, or it may just be that they get to take a little piece of all the Apple money because they speak to a portion of that audience. I think that's an interesting, again, it's not News Plus and Apple News when it launched were almost portrayed as being like the savior of journalism, and that's not what it is. But as an aggregator of lots of content that can give you a little love and a little bit of money, in addition to you trying to build your own direct to consumer business over here, put those together, sweep the money together, and you've got enough to have a business. I think that's pretty good.
And the thing is that a lot of cable providers and everything else, they all went to these a la carte, but can you actually get people to subscribe? You might be able to make, Paramount is selling a subscription for X amount of dollars when they were getting much less as a per sub from the cable networks, but they were getting all of the cable networks. They were getting 50 cents on, or $1 or $2 on every person that was in that network. And so I think that there is a value to trying to persuade people to download your app and be part of your thing and everything else, compared to, if at 24%, it's X amount of, if Apple got to 60% or 70% or 80%, it could start turning into real money, where some publishers that aren't successful at selling their own version of this end up making enough money that that's all they do. And some publishers will continue to try to do their own or this of both of those markets. But I think that there is a play here that is, I'm just going to make money with the Apple News. It's not, when it rolls out, it's probably not big enough to do that. But if Apple got to 40, 50, 60% of their market of paying the Apple One, whatever, it would definitely be enough for a lot of publishers to survive on.
Yeah. And it's also the obvious risk is that Apple, a knock-on effect could be that Apple does to that individual publisher what they kind of like to do with developers on the App Store, where they don't want to create new customers of that news source. They want to basically create people that are just Apple News customers. And by the way, you happen to read an article from the Beast, you happen to read an article from this, that, or the other. It kind of feeds into why the thing that made Apple News Plus not useless to me, but really, really unattractive, was that I can't pop a URL out of there. I can't get a link right back to the Daily Beast or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. It would always pop out in Apple News. And I'm sure part of that is to the benefit of the news source, because when someone clicks on that link, if I send it to somebody, they get credit for, someone clicked on that link through Apple News. But it's like, I'm not there to, it becomes useless to me when I'm trying to stay on top of things and save something
for shows. I can't use it to prepare for shows. It's not useful that way.
Not necessarily the greatest part of the audience, I'm sure, but it's like,
right.
I thought it was. I like how Google News and others, like, if you want the direct URL, they will give you the direct URL. You don't have to, Mission Impossible your way through macOS to get that URL.
The advantage, as you see Apple continue to add more and more audio, the advantage of publishers starting to make more and more money on the subscription is that, because the real problem that publishers have is that if we went all audio, that they wouldn't. It's very hard because you can't get people to listen to ads for very long unless they're read in. You can't just place ads, and so that ad insertion thing doesn't really work for very long, and especially if people are paying for it. And so the advantage is that as people start to do that, like I pay for Noah. And I listen to a smattering of news. They don't give me all the news. I can't get all of foreign affairs but I listen to a smattering of the news. And I'm sure they're getting money back for me listening to those things. And they're getting some, there's some licensing fee there. But if Noah started adding ads, I'd stop listening almost immediately. It would be an instant, I finally, for a while I put it off, but with Amazon Prime, there was enough shows that my family was watching that I finally spent the $3 a month to get rid of those. The ads are so horrible on Amazon. I feel like they're just trying to get you to pay $3 a month because it is just the most horrible experience for Amazon Prime to just, you're in the middle of a show and it's louder, it's brighter, it's all the horrible things happen. So you just suddenly savaged by the ad, and I just don't feel like they're even trying to make money with ads. I think they're just trying to get everyone to pay $3 more a month.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking the same thing about the news that Instagram was testing out unskippable ads where you're scrolling through, you hit an ad, it just
can you
knocks you
believe
dead
that?
to get the thing. And it would be useful if you were now saying, oh, by the way, if you want to get rid of these ads, give us $3.80 a month. I'm like, okay, how much do I want Instagram anymore?
Yeah, no,
I have to. Yeah. Amazon's doing enough that I have definitely turned from being a big Amazon fan to I'm putting up with them now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the risk because Whole Foods is turning into Trader Joe's and Amazon is now making the returns harder and they're charging me for, they're squeezing me in every different direction that I've used. And I think that's always the risk is that you go too far down this path and it's not that I'm leaving Amazon and not ever ordering from them again. But it's like I'm open to it. No, because
the good news is all the local retailers are out of business. We lowered the prices so low, no one can compete. Now we own you. Welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's that's where we're headed.
Well, it always opens opportunity. When companies do too much of that, then people start to go, well.
Yeah, that's right. That's really the more important part of Corey's famous enshittification piece is not that how enshittification works and how widespread it is. That's become very apparent. But the antidote to that is making it easy to switch. Because if the switching costs are low, then your response when they start squeezing you to get every penny out of you is say, sorry, Red Lobster, I'm going down the road to whatever the pie place is. Problem is these companies like Amazon end up squeezing out your local retailers. So all you have, your choice is Walmart or Amazon in a lot of cases.
It's part of that, but it's also part of just bad user experiences is really the lock-in. A handful of companies have figured out how to make this easy, and everyone else thinks that they can just add a bunch of features and people are going to use them. And if I get a bad user experience, I'm just being like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And it doesn't matter. I don't go to gas stations that don't do Apple Pay. Because
there's a lot of choices in gas stations. That's the point. There's competition. When there is no competition, they can squeeze you.
But I feel like so many web pages don't.
How do you like your cable company? Right?
Oh yeah, I don't have. I don't use. I use the internet for my cable.
Yeah,
company.
right. So there's no other choice. They got you, and so that's when they can squeeze you.
A good example, Comcast is only here. Frontier keeps on giving me flyers, but it's the moment Frontier. Yeah. This is the problem for Comcast. The moment Frontier arrives at my house, I'm done with Comcast.
Right.
And that's the risk that they have is
without competition, free markets do not work. Period. Hey, it's Leo Laporte. If you enjoyed this little snippet of our programming, make sure you check out the full MacBreak Weekly. The link is right down there.